Welcome to the John Freakin Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, on to this week's episode. As many of our regular listeners know, I've been looking for someone to come onto the podcast who has hiked on the Faroe Islands. I've seen just some incredible images on Instagram of the Faroes with its steep, angular cliffs and amazing scenery. And I need to have somebody on that can talk about it. And up to this point, we haven't had anybody. So, well, through the magic of social media, I was able to secure this week's guest, Cassie Johannes. Welcome to the pod, Cassie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I know you've done some hiking out there. Have you picked up a trail name up to this point?
I haven't, no. But
Okay.
Maybe after this podcast, maybe I will.
Okay, we'll be on the lookout for a trail name for you then.
All right, perfect.
All right. Hey, have you listened to the podcast before?
I haven't. So this is all new for me. So really, like you said, Nikki, mutual friend, was following you and connected us via social media. So
Yeah, she is the top commenter on my social media and
I believe it.
on the podcast. She says a lot of nice things out there. So I'm
Yes.
grateful for her for those comments and also for hooking us up here to have you come on and talk about the Faroe Islands.
Yeah.
So the
She
only
was
reason I asked about whether or not you've listened to the podcast before is to give you a heads up on a regular segment we do. It's called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. And so what that is as we get to the end of the episode, I'm going to turn to you and I'm going to say, Cassie, what is your pro tip insight of the week for our listeners? What can you share with them to make their next outside experience even more epic? So we're looking for you for some wisdom and some insight.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Hey, another feature we've been doing this season is the must bring gear review. Here's how it works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day hike, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. Cassie, what's your must-bring piece of gear?
Well, right now, because we're hiking with 3 children, my backpack obviously is imperative. I have to have all of the snacks, diapers, water, all of the pertinent things for the kids and everything. So right now we're just hiking with an Osprey backpack that's lightweight, and I'm, loving it, and it gets all the stuff that I need to get in to have on the trail with us for all 3 children, which is super helpful.
Nice. Now, how old are the children?
So I have a 9-year-old girl, a 7-year-old boy, and then an 8-month-old.
8-month-old. Wow.
Yeah. She's been hiking we took her up to the Dolomites in Italy when she was 6 weeks old. So she was up in the mountains, just being carried and along for the ride. Has no idea all the cool things that she's seen already.
So she's been hiking since before she was walking.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. She gets the best ride on all the hikes too.
Now, you mentioned you're in Italy, the Dolomites, and so we should probably share with our listeners the specifics of this episode interview, and that it's early morning in Southern California where I am, and it's early evening where you are in Italy.
Yep, exactly. So we are in Naples, Italy. So we're in southern Italy. My husband is in the military. He's active duty Army. So we're stationed here. We've been here for almost 3 years. And every place that we go, and we've been fortunate enough to live in amazing places. Our goal is just to explore, travel, hike, adventure as much as we can every place that we live. And Italy is a phenomenal place to be able to do that.
Yeah. In addition to the Dolomites, what else have you seen in Italy?
Well, just this past weekend, we went to Castellabate. I'm probably going to butcher all the names today, but that's okay. We're going to just do the best I can. We were hiking out there along the Tyrrhenian Sea. I mean, with the Dolomites, Tuscany, Puglia has some of the best beaches we've ever seen, clearest water, Tropea. We've been north, south, east, west, and especially this past year being confined more to our region in Italy, we unfortunately haven't been able to get out of Italy as much as we typically were the first 2 years. So we've been really forced to just really focus on Italy, which isn't the worst thing to have to travel and stay. So we've done a ton. I mean, you name it. Italy has something for everyone, whether you want to drink wine, lay on the beach, hike in mountains, go on lakes, you name it, Italy has it.
Wow. Are you getting a retainer from the Italian Travel Bureau?
I wish. That would be awesome. We definitely are helping keep their economy going right now, that's for sure. I'm happy to do my part.
Very good. Now, Italy, not far from Switzerland. Any hiking in the Alps?
Yep. So we've done a lot of hiking in the Alps, not so much on this go around. We did skiing. We went skiing this time last year, 2 years ago, sorry. But we had also been stationed in Germany 12 years ago. So we lived in Germany and we didn't have children then. So we did a ton of traveling, but we went up in Switzerland when we first moved here, the very first summer that we moved to Italy. And you'll hear me say this all the time in Southern Italy. During the summertime, it's way too hot, way too many people, way too many tourists for us. We enjoy cooler weather, in nature, up in the mountains. And so our first summer that we were here, we went and spent 2 weeks in Switzerland and just bebopped around, found different trails, hiked. I mean, the mountains there, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We've done canyoning. We went canyoning and whitewater rafting and zip lining. Our favorite, they're called alpine coasters. They're roller coasters through the mountains that you just ride on. The kids are riding by themselves. It's breathtaking. You're looking at these gorgeous mountains. Cows are right beside you. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a definite must-visit destination on my list. I've got to get to Switzerland and the Alps. It just looks incredible.
Yes, 100%. Do it.
Yeah. All right. Hey, let's back up a second and talk about your background and growing up and how you got involved in the outdoor experience. So you grew up in the States. Where'd you grow up?
Yep. So I grew up in Houston, Texas. So we do not have mountains there. We have really large anthills that we like to joke about. But I was a competitive soccer player. So played soccer starting at 4, competitive U.S. national team, played at Oklahoma State University. So very active and love.
Well, hang on a second. Let's back up. U.S. national team. How did I not know about this going into the interview? I did not do my homework. What's going on?
No, they have this. We have this awesome program. It's called the Olympic Development Program, ODP, yep. And I was a big participant in it for the U16 and U18 national pools. So, yeah, big soccer player. Earned a scholarship to play at Oklahoma State. Played there all 4 years. And not a lot of mountains in Oklahoma either.
No. What position did you play in soccer?
So I was center midfield.
Okay. Yep.
Yes, a lot of running. Very active.
Yep.
4 knee surgeries, also did a number on my knees. So, I've always been active in every sport. Soccer just happened to be the one that I was the best at and I could, pay for my college. So focused on that. Growing up, my parents always had us going on ski trips and outdoorsy vacations. And so it was always instilled in me that, being active, taking care of your body, moving, enjoying nature was just, something that you do. So after college, I was looking for different ways to stay active. I was pretty burnt out from soccer, also kind of destroyed my body. So, I was just looking for different ways to stay active. And there was a few places in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I lived after college and did some hiking there, picked up traveling, realized that I'm not a big city person. Could be that I grew up in Houston, Texas, but every trip that I plan and try to go on, I'm out in the country, off the beaten path, driving, looking for waterfalls, all that stuff. So.
Right. Now, did you ever do any overnight backpacking growing up, or was it just camping, or just being outdoors and doing day hikes?
Yeah, more camping, day hiking. I have not done any overnight backpacking. That is definitely a bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, active duty Army Ranger, like he's definitely had his fair share of, probably not the type of backpacking that he would want to be doing. But I think one day I hope that he and I can do that together. His schedule's pretty crazy, and then kids came along and everything like that.
Right.
But it's definitely on my bucket list to do.
Okay, and so you've done a lot of traveling, or
Yes.
Sounds like. What places have you visited besides the Faroe Islands?
Well, I've been to 55 countries, so a lot of all over. I mean, pretty much every country in Europe. There's a few that we're not going to get to see prior to leaving here. Unfortunately, our plans were different this past year. But I mean, we've been Norway, Sweden, Finland, Germany, France, Switzerland, Austria, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, every country in Europe. Egypt.
Hey, speaking of Luxembourg, did you know that the John Freakin Muir Pod is number 2 on their wilderness podcasting chart right now? So
wow, good for you. That's awesome. Very cool. It's a really cool country. You'll have to go there when you're going to Switzerland. Yeah. You'll be a celebrity there. That's awesome. Yeah, and then we lived in Hawaii. We were stationed in Hawaii prior to coming to Naples, Italy, and so I had my heart set on traveling to Australia and New Zealand, 2 other amazing places to hike. Like Milford Sound in New Zealand was one of, besides the Faroe Islands, like it's up there with the Faroe Islands. I was like, what planet am I on? This is unbelievable. So. Egypt, Tunisia, we've Israel. That was our big trip last year. We've gone everywhere. I mean, I want to see every country. So I need things to open back up. Got a lot of stuff to do.
Right. Yeah. I had a guest on last season. His name was Rick Gazarian. He goes by Global Gaz. He has a podcast, and his podcast focuses solely on the people who are either have or are in the middle of their process of visiting all 193 UN recognized countries. Mm-hmm. And so you've been to 55. You're about, a fourth of the way, a third of the way there. You can do it. Absolutely.
I can do it. I know. I need to set a goal of, X amount of countries by this, X age for me. And I'm better with very specific goals to make it happen. So obviously being over here in Europe, it is so easy to see a lot of countries, especially when we lived in Germany. We could, drive to France for the day and come back. So I'm so thankful for that. And for the first 2 years here, we were able to do a ton and take the kids around. It's awesome. I much prefer taking them all over and paying for that than toys and games and stuff like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned being stationed in Hawaii, Germany, Italy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you kind of alluded to maybe a change of scenery coming up. Is there a new deployment?
There is. So we are actually moving May 17th. So very short coming up from Italy, and we're heading to Charleston, South Carolina. So definitely, another ocean, another coast, another different state that we haven't lived in, another area to explore. I've already started getting on some Instagram accounts looking for North and South Carolina. North Carolina's got some great mountains, some ski resorts up there. So starting to get our adventures planned for there. We'll be there for two short years. It'll go by really fast. So need to fill up our calendar.
Oh, I was going to say that, you're closer to the Appalachian Trail, but
in the Appalachian Trail. Yeah.
I mean, you could do some day hikes on it, but with the kids at their current ages and your husband still doing what he does, probably won't get to do, take 3 or 4 months off and do the whole thing.
Right. So that is his major bucket list with a buddy of his that he grew up with. He is, from the day I met him, he has said that he wants to do that trail, the whole thing, and camp and all that stuff. So maybe one day, maybe when he's done with the Army and he has time, he can go do it. And I'll join him along the way.
Well, you'll have to point him in the direction of one of our episodes, season 2, with Jeebs. He's a triple crowner, and he was in the U.S. Navy. Yeah, retired as a lieutenant commander, and it was on his bucket list to do the AT. And he showed up to Springer Mountain with a 50-pound pack on his back, and wasn't quite sure what he got himself into. But an incredible story. He went on from doing the AT to doing the Continental Divide Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail in the next 2 years. So in the matter of 3 years, he did the 3 long trails in the U.S.
That's awesome. Very cool. I'll have to check that out for sure.
Yep. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the first time back in the States for you in a while?
Yeah. So the last time it was 2 Christmases ago. So it's been a while. My daughter was born, our baby was born over here in Italy. So she's never been in the States. So when we go back in May, that'll be her first time. And then, we haven't been back in a couple of years. So we're missing it. We were far away from family in Hawaii. We're far away from family again in Italy. So we're excited to get back. But, our weekends are a lot more fun over here. Probably, saying that we're hopping over to France for the weekend.
Right.
We won't be doing that.
Yeah. Be hopping over to North Carolina.
The beach. Yeah. North Carolina, okay. Kiowa Island. Maybe I've checked out. Yeah. Lots of beaches. Yeah. We'll find stuff.
These days I've been hopping from the family room to the living room to the backyard occasionally. So.
Yep, I know. It is not fun. And there for a while we were, had the hard lockdown like what you guys are experiencing, of not being allowed outside. And we live in an apartment building, and it's just, it has not been good. Not been good for the soul. We need to be outside.
Yeah. Now, your youngest daughter that was born in Italy, does she have dual citizenship?
She doesn't, because she is military. She's military dependent. And then the one building that we own on the military base that we rent and lease from the Italians is the hospital. So technically it's considered American ground. So she does not, but she does have an Italian birth certificate. And little fun fact, yes, we live in Naples, Italy, but the town that is on her birth certificate is Griciano di Aversa. So every time she has to write where she's from or her place of birth, it's Griciano di Aversa. We kind of hosed her on that one.
Very good.
It sounds cool, but Naples would have been a lot easier.
Yeah, it just rolls off your tongue there, but that's a lot to bubble in on the standardized tests or
I know.
any kind
I
of
think
forms.
I know. Unfortunately, she can't. We gave her a big hard one. So.
Nice. And do the kids go to an American school?
They do. So we have a Department of Defense school here on base. And so the majority of the kids that they go with are American military kids. There's a few, because my husband actually works for NATO. So he is, big in the NATO community. And there's a few NATO children from Canada, Germany, Denmark, I believe, that also go to the school that my kids are at. So, but mostly Americans that they're with. So we immersed them in the Italian program when we got here, and they learned enough Italian to get by. We all have, but we were traveling so much to so many different countries at the beginning that when they were needing to use their Italian, we weren't using it as much because we were in Germany using our German, and so just all different places.
What a life experience for them, just growing up in different countries and having that experience. Incredible.
Yeah. That's what we try to tell them and remind them, wherever we're stationed. We've been in, Illinois and California and Hawaii, Oklahoma, like all different places, that every place that we go, we just need to learn the area, do adventures, explore, give back, and embrace the different areas and places and cultures that we get to experience. It's a really cool life. You got to make the best of it. They definitely go through some hardships for sure with their active duty parent gone a ton. So, but it's all about the mindset and, how you kind of tackle it. So.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, let's turn to hiking. Now, I know you said you were a soccer player and you had, did you say 4 knee surgeries?
4 knee surgeries and an ankle surgery, and I've kind of beat up my body.
And so what were the nature of those injuries? Were they both knees? Was it one bad knee in particular?
Yep. So both knees have had 2 surgeries. Both were, one was ACL, MCL, and then the second surgery was cartilage, ACL as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much everything, ACL, MCL, lateral medial meniscus, cartilage, kind of just torn it all. So yeah, my knees aren't great, unfortunately, and I definitely feel it on my hikes. It's funny, this past weekend when we were hiking, some of our friends that we were with had poles, and I honestly, I've not used poles before, and I'm sold, and now I'm like, okay, I got to go get myself some poles. I'm at that point. I felt it. I felt a huge difference when we were heading back up the mountain and on the steps and stuff that we were climbing up. I felt a huge difference having the poles.
Yes, you have to do poles, and it's not just because your knees. I think anybody out there should be doing poles, and there are a lot of people who are reticent to do poles because they think, oh, I'm going to look awkward. People are going to look at me funny. Yep. No, poles are a lifesaver. Going uphill, going downhill.
Yep. The mud. We hit a lot of mud. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, 100%. That was me. I was that person that was like, I'm not there yet. I don't need those yet. And now I'm like, oh, I'm eating a humble piece of pie. I need those poles. Give me the poles. And I need them for the kids. Like, right, now, and my husband, we all need them. So That's my next purchase.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that you pronounced the Faroe Islands differently than I did.
Okay.
Is that because you are worldly and sophisticated and understand, and you're doing the native pronunciation? Tell us how it's pronounced again.
Probably not. I am just going with, so is it because I'm adding an S on the Faroe Islands?
Yes.
Faroe. Yeah.
Ferris,
so
it sounds like a Ferris wheel.
Ferris. Yeah. So Faroe Islands. Am I saying it?
I don't know. I thought I was saying it wrong. I was going to go with whatever you had.
Yeah, no. So I've seen it in when I was like planning the trip and everything, I've seen it different. I'm wondering if Faros is the plural that they're adding, because I have seen it written as Faroe Island and then Faroe Islands. But I say Faroe Islands, and not for any particular reason. I'm just phonetically saying it.
Okay. All right. Very good. I just want to make sure I wasn't making a mistake.
No. You're good.
All right. So how did you end up on the Faroe Islands doing those hikes? Obviously, your husband wasn't stationed there.
No.
So how did you pick this destination? How did it come onto your radar?
Yeah, so funny story. Like I was talking about earlier, it was our summer trip that we were looking at. My husband gets 2 weeks of block leave, basically, where that means that he has 2 weeks of time that he could take leave where there's not a lot of big work happening. So we always try to travel during those times. And it was a summertime trip again. We wanted to get out of the Naples heat, and we were like, let's go north. We had already been to Norway, Sweden, Finland, a lot of the other northern countries, and I had my heart set on Iceland. So the trip actually started out as an Iceland trip, and I started doing all the research. I knew that we could get to Iceland from the States easy, but when I had my mind set on something, I was like, we're going to Iceland. So started looking up all the stuff on Iceland, and I'm looking at the map, and I notice, a cluster of islands, and I'm like, oh, what are those? And I zoom in, and it says Faroe Islands. And I was like, let me go to Pinterest, which is usually my next thing that I go to look up some pictures, because if it's not pretty, I'm not coming. And I was blown away by the pictures. I mean, every single picture that was there, I was like, wow. So then I started reading about the Faroe Islands, and I was like, hey, changed my mind. We're going to Faroe Islands. and making that our main trip. What we ended up doing is hopping over to Iceland, but we spent most of our time, we spent 8 days in Faroe Islands, and then we did, I think it was 5 days in Iceland, which is not enough. You need more days in Iceland for sure. But we were going over there knowing that we would probably go back to Iceland from the States, as well. So that's kind of how it started. It was focusing on Iceland, and then I noticed a cluster of islands, and like I said earlier, I'm an off the beaten path person. We always, rent our own car, we drive, we find things along the way. We're just not huge into cities and stuff like that. So the Faroe Islands were just perfect for the type of travel that I like to do.
And from your research, I know this isn't your thing, but did you notice, is there a multi-day long distance trail on the Faroe Islands?
Yeah, so there's a lot. I don't specifically remember a multi-day one. I definitely think you could. The thing about the Faroe Islands is they're very desolate. You have like Tórshavn is your main capital, I believe it is. And then we stayed in a different town, took some notes, write it down to hopefully try not to butcher all the names. But so we stayed in a different area. It was a little town northeast of Tórshavn. And those are your two big towns, and they're still pretty small. And then all the little cluster villages, they don't have restaurants. So if you're going there to do an overnight one, I'm not saying that you can't. You are just 100% committed, and you're out there on your own and everything. And then they're not huge islands. So a lot of times you're taking helicopters or ferry rides in between the islands, but they only happen every morning. And then there's one in the afternoon and stuff like that. So there probably is. That definitely wasn't with the kids. It wasn't on my radar, so I wasn't doing specific research on that. Okay.
And what was your base of operations while you were there?
So the town that we stayed in, hang on, I just want to make sure. Klavix is where we stayed. So you fly into Vagar. Again, I'm probably going to butcher all the names, but there's one airport, there's one main airport. So you fly into that airport, and then, we stayed in Klavix. So, and I liked our base. Initially I was looking at Tórshavn because it definitely had more restaurants, kind of had some nightlife. We had kids, so we weren't really doing it. But I was really late on planning this trip, and there wasn't anything available in that town that was a B&B that we wanted. So we always do Airbnbs. We want kitchens. We want to be able to cook. And especially for this type of trip, the first thing that we did is we went to the grocery store right when we got there. You have to rent a car. In my opinion, you need a car there. You are going to pay an arm and a leg for it. But it's worth it. They do have public transportation, but it just takes away so much of your time and your freedom to be able to move about at your own pace, your own time, get to a hike, a trail, see a town before sunset, stuff like that. So, and you have to book the car way in advance. That's definitely one of my tips, because I think we got the last car when I finally made the reservations and pulled the trigger. There was not any vehicles, and because there's only a set amount of vehicles, so that's it. If you don't get one, you are out of luck.
Right. Now, getting over there, was the airfare expensive?
It was. So that was another thing. I was trying to make it as cheap as possible, and what I found here in Europe travel, we do a lot of one-way flights. So we actually were able to fly really cheaply from Naples into Paris. And then we did an overnight on points, because the next day was a cheaper flight one way from Paris straight into Faroe Islands. So my guess is people coming from the States would either fly into Iceland, or they could fly and connect in Paris. And then it was Atlantic Airways, I believe it was, that we flew in on, and it was expensive, but So
No,
worth it.
no Army Ranger discount.
No Army Ranger discount.
Oh man.
Unfortunately, I wish.
And the Airbnb expense, is that typical? What would a Airbnb usually cost depending on
Yeah, that was the
size and
cheapest part
scale?
of the whole trip for
Yeah.
sure. The car broke us, but it was for 8 days. I think it was like $1,700. It's crazy. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Airbnb was a lot cheaper. And I don't, because in like New Zealand, when we were going to New Zealand, we were looking at doing the camper van thing. They don't have that option like they do in New Zealand. Like I was kind of hoping, at least at the time. And tourism might have picked up since we went 2 years ago. Because I do feel like, especially with social media and everything, it's getting a lot more traction. But it was, just a handful of tourists that were there when we were there, traveling around, that you'd kind of pass on a couple of different hikes and whatnot. But so the Airbnb wasn't horrible. Not the worst part.
Not quite as many tourists there as in southern Italy over the summer.
No, it was glorious to get away. Way too many people in southern Italy in the summertime.
Nice. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I think we've got maybe 5 different hikes to kind of go in depth on over in the Faroe Islands. So
there you go.
Stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We're talking to Cassie. I've kind of gone through her background, and now we're getting to the nitty-gritty about her time on the Faroe Islands. So let's talk about some of these hikes that you did with your family. What are some memorable moments from your trip there?
Well, I think the biggest thing about the Faroe Islands that I loved was you were feeling like you're in a different world, and there was not a lot of people. And we were there in the summertime, which I highly recommend. We had the best weather. We had one day, the first day of rain, which did actually bump one of our hikes, but we had beautiful blue skies the rest of the time. You could see Iceland from where we were on one of the hikes. And I don't think that happens very often. I think it is definitely a hit or miss with the Faroe Islands. That's one of the things you always have to be prepared for, the change of weather. And I don't know what we did right or how we were so lucky, but our days were just beautiful. And there were so many times just up at the top of the mountain, sitting there watching the kids eat their snacks or their lunch that we packed, and just taking a step back and being like, wow, like we are here. We got to do this. This is phenomenal.
Now, how many islands are there?
So I believe there's 18. Don't quote me on that, but I believe I remember reading that.
Okay. And so were you able to visit multiple islands, or did you spend all your time on one?
Nope. So we visited multiple. I believe we saw 7. So all of the islands are interconnected through either ferry rides. Most of them, the main ones, are connected through underground tunnels, under the water, which is really fun. And then a side note of driving there, the tunnels are one way. There's one tunnel that's 2-way, but the tunnels are one way, but 2-way traffic with little, we call them chicken, like playing chicken cutoffs, that you basically are just watching for and hoping that the person has their headlights on. And you're just going until someone, cuts off and dips off, and hope that everything is timed right. And then you keep going. So it's crazy.
So it's a one-way tunnel, and you could have cars going opposite directions.
Yep.
Or opposing directions, I should say. But
Yep.
there are little turnouts that you're able to kind of pull to the side and let the other person go.
Yep. So I'm sure there's a certain amount of meters that they are away from each other, but as you're driving, and they are on both sides, but it just is, it's truly a game of chicken. You're just driving through these tunnels, and then you just are zipping over real fast, or someone else is zipping over. And there's not, at least from what I had read and what we were noticing, there's not sometimes there's priority, like if you're on the priority side, you're the one that dips in. From my recollection, unless we were doing it wrong, that wasn't the case, but we were playing it safe. And anytime we would see headlights, we just would quickly dip over and then try to make it to the next one before we saw headlights again. But definitely adds to the excitement of getting to the places. So you're able to see a lot of the different islands because they're all connected. The main ones, there's a few that you have to take ferries out to. And we didn't make it out to a couple of them, just time, we didn't have enough time.
Right. How long are these tunnels?
Gosh, the main one that we would always take from the town we stayed in into Torshaven was, I feel like it would take us 10 minutes to drive through. So it was pretty cool. And they have them decorated with lights, and there's one that has a whale painted on it. And so the kids would always get really excited. They'd be like, there's the whale again.
I don't know about anybody else. That sounds a little nerve-wracking to me. 10 minutes under the ocean as you're going from one island to another.
Yep. It is scary when you're driving in there and you're like, oh, okay, we're underwater right now.
All right. So let's talk about some of your adventures over there. What sites did you see? What stood out?
Yeah. So the very first one that again, if you get on Pinterest or Instagram and you're looking at Faroe Islands, I would say the main one is this Mulafosser, again, gonna butcher the names, waterfall. I feel like it's kind of the iconic picture that a lot of people see for Faroe Islands, and it's right by the airport. So we landed, got our car, got groceries, and the other best thing about the summertime is you have daylight until, beyond midnight. Like there's, I think, 2 hours of the sun actually kind of being down. So our days were really long, which is great because we weren't in a rush to leave in the morning, but then we had plenty of light to do stuff later in the evening. And at the time we didn't have my baby. We just had our 7-year-old and 9-year-old. Mm-hmm. So you leave the airport and you drive about 20 minutes to this little town that's called Gassadalur. I wish I was better with the names, but this town has 18 residents, and before they connected a tunnel, I think it was in 2004, they connected a tunnel to this town. You had to hike, and it was one of the longest hikes. And you can still hike, but because we drove in to the town, flew in late, we decided to drive over there. So now you can take the tunnel, you drive, you park in this little town. It was so cute. I think half of the residents were out there cutting hay, and they were gathering stuff for probably getting ready for the winter. It was a family. We saw the wives bring the husbands that were working food and wine, and they were sitting and just on this amazing cliff with this little town of 18 little houses up the way, sitting on top of this amazing waterfall. So we were kind of just taking that in, just watching them. I love always seeing and, trying to immerse ourselves in the local community anytime we go somewhere. So we're just kind of watching them. And so then you park in that area and you walk through this little gate, and you just, it's not a far hike by any means, but you go down this hill, maybe about a mile, and it gets you almost down to the ocean, and you turn far right and look back, and it is just unbelievable. You've got this waterfall cascading into the ocean. The little town is sprinkled on top of it. There's a huge mountain, and the mountains are very cone shaped. I know you see them when you're Googling pictures, but they're all very cone shaped, and there was this huge one right behind the town, very green and lush, and the water is super blue. And it was that's when I knew, I was like, yeah, this is my happy place. I will love it here. I'm not leaving, actually. I think I told my husband.
Nice. Now, I always wonder when I see little villages like that out in the middle of such beauty, could I live there? I grew up in the suburbs of a major metropolitan city and have been, around, population density my whole life. And so I wonder, as beautiful as that is, would I go stir crazy? What do you think? Would you go stir crazy there, or could you make a go of it?
I think I would eventually go stir crazy. And it's just, that's part of my nature. Actually, I think could be, 15 years of doing this military life with my husband and moving every 2 years. I get, come 2 years, I'm like, okay, where are we going next? I actually really enjoy it. I love change. So I do think I would go stir crazy, but there are definitely days, when you're in the hustle and bustle of life where I think back of that and I'm like, can you imagine just how easy and chill life would be? And, they just are probably enjoying, they probably live really long because they don't have a lot of stress and, just hanging out with your family, working in this amazing place. But I'm sure I'd be curious to talk to a local person and see how many of them stay on the Faroe Islands and continue to work, or do a lot of them leave? And, maybe the younger population, I'd be curious about that. But yeah, I think I would probably be good for 6 months and then I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, one of the things that comes up over and over again on the podcast is the simplicity of through hiking, multi-day backpacking, that, you have a single goal, and that's, you get up and you're hiking to the next campsite, and everything else kind of falls away. All the complexity of modern life, the appointments, the phone calls, the, whatever else is going on in our lives, all that's
Gone.
just falls by the wayside, and
Yeah.
you're just doing your thing out there. I think it's probably very similar for these small villages. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
And
Life
that
is
is
simple, and
right.
you have your family, and definitely in a way I envy that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And how did the locals treat you? How do they treat tourists over there?
Yeah, so it was really nice. Again, I don't feel like tourism there. I think Iceland, gets a huge part of the tourism that's coming over from the States, and Europeaners. I don't feel like Faroe Island, based how, talking to people, they definitely get some, but they're not getting a ton like Iceland is. So, I think that helps. Like we went to we were there, I believe it was August, end of July, August, and there's a summer festival in the town that we were at. And honestly, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about, I read it after we had booked our Airbnb, and so it just kind of worked out, and it was a rock festival, and apparently it's the biggest rock festival on the islands, and it's a local thing. There's some Europeaners that are coming over.
Now, when you say rock festival, I want to clarify and make sure I don't get the wrong understanding here. You're like talking about rock music, and not like rock.
Not like
rocks.
hiking. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Rock music.
Okay.
So you go hiking and then you come down and do rock music. So yeah, a rock music festival. So we went to that, and we ended up going into one of the school's gym, and they had like a little festival for kids. They had a bunch of blow ups, and we sat in the bleachers with some local moms, and we were chatting about, kids. Moms can always relate to each other pretty quickly. And I was checking out their strollers, because the strollers that they have over there, because it gets so cold, they are huge. I mean, they're at 6 feet. I felt like they were probably not that big, 4 feet, I would say, with these huge tires. I mean, it looked like they were going to take them out, through the snow, but they're super warm and all wool. And all of the moms had these strollers. And so that was a thing that we were talking about. But yeah, nice. And a lot of them spoke English. So that, I mean, I think English is their second language there.
What's their first?
Oh gosh.
Is it Danish?
Danish, yeah, because they're a province of Denmark.
Right.
They use the krone. Yeah, so it's Danish, but they have a spin to it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then English. So, and we didn't have to converse with people. I would say you could fully not immerse yourself or talk to locals or anything, just based on how the Faroe Islands are, hiking, being out in nature. There's not a ton of restaurants in these little towns that are all over the place. So you really could go over there and not. But we went to that rock festival that was in a different language. We were rocking out. It was interesting. I have some pretty funny video on that. The kids are having a good time.
Nice. Well, you have to send me pictures and videos of what we're talking about so we can, promote this episode. And I'd love to see some video from this rock concert.
Yes,
event.
I will. Yeah. I will send it to you. It's really good. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've covered the Mulafasser waterfall. And again, with the names of places, if you just say it with confidence, Cassie, no one's going to question you. Just say it with confidence. Be just fine.
All right. Well, this next one, we're going to have to use a lot of confidence.
Okay.
All right. So the next one is the optical illusion hike. Basically, if you Google that, you will, I think it's probably the only place that would pop up in the world, and it's Lake Sorvaxvitan.
Sounds good.
So it is, yeah. So it's the largest lake in the Faroe Islands. So this one was interesting. I had seen pictures again.
Is this the lake that's like on the edge of a cliff overhanging the ocean?
Yep.
That looks incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. So naturally I saw pictures on Pinterest and I was like, well, we have to do this. So did all the research, put it in our itinerary and everything. And it really is, so you go and you park. It's managed by the park rangers. You do have to pay to go on this hike. It's very cheap. And you get hot chocolate at the end. So we were like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So you park and it's a flat hike out. There's a few little hills, but you're walking straight out to the ocean. And then right at the end, you just hike straight up this huge hill. And it's, a little peninsula that just juts out into the ocean. And you go to the very south tip of that. And you turn around and look back, and all of a sudden, like if you line it up right, the lake literally looks like it's floating on top of the edge of the cliff, and then you have the ocean right below you. And then off to the left, if you're looking at the lake from there, then you can hike back down the mountain and go over down the coastline a little bit, and you'll see a beautiful waterfall there as well that's cascading into the ocean. So, and I have, again, the coolest picture. I hiked up first because I wanted to get pictures of my husband and the kids down like over by the lake. And then my son and my husband hiked up, and I was down with my daughter after she hiked up. And I have just the coolest picture of my husband and son way too close to the edge. But they're just these tiny little dots, looking over this ginormous cliff into the ocean. It's just beautiful. And we were there. That one we ended up, we had done a lot of stuff and visited a few towns prior. And that one we were doing at sunset. So I believe we were hiking out there at like 8 o'clock at night. So obviously you still had plenty of light, but the lighting was unbelievable. It was gorgeous.
Oh, I can't wait to see the pictures.
Yeah.
Now you say it's an optical illusion. What is the reality? I mean, I know what the optical illusion looks like because I've seen the pictures, but what is the reality?
So the reality is there is a lake there that you pass by. But the way when you get to the farthest point south, when you turn around and you line up the two parts of the cliff, it just looks like it's sitting right on top of, like just floating on top of the edge of the cliff. So it is there. But it's crazy. I mean, I know you've seen the pictures. It's because then you could step out into a different area and you're like, oh, okay, well, there's the lake there. But when you get to the southernmost part and you turn around and you look back, the way the cliff just combines together, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this lake is just floating on top of the edge.
Got it. So the reality is that it's actually set a little bit further back. And
a little bit further back.
And just looks like a lake, like a normal lake. But because of the way the cliffs line up, when you're standing at a certain point, it looks like that it's like right at the very edge and hanging over. Got it.
Yep. Yeah. And as you're hiking up there, you're having the whole time you have this lake to your right as you're hiking up there. And so I kept thinking like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Well, we'll see if this all of a sudden pops out, but it does. You just keep going up and keep going out.
God.
Oh, and side note, I'm terrified of heights. Terrified. So this one, getting to the edge where you actually need to be to see it always tests me. But I just continue to do these hikes and jump out of planes and do things to push myself, I guess.
Wait. Jump out of planes? Where did this come from?
Yeah. So in Hawaii, when we were stationed in Hawaii, I was like, I don't feel like I can leave. I wanted to skydive, but I didn't want to skydive. But I was like, I feel like I'm in Hawaii. You can't leave Hawaii and not skydive. Or if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die in Hawaii.
Yeah, I was going to
really
say, Cassie, I've been to Hawaii 5 times. I've never had the thought I've got to skydive
you
before I leave. No, sorry.
I know. And the funny thing is I had a couple cousins in town that were visiting, and they are adventurous and young, and they, were looking for something to do on their last day. And I was like, well, I've wanted to do this, but I've been too scared to do it. How do y'all feel about it? And they were like, yes, let's do it. And I called my friend the night before, and I was like, who's also terrified of heights. And I was like, hey, you want to jump out of a plane tomorrow? And she was like, no way. Maybe. So we went back and forth. And then we finally decided that we were just going to do it and not turn around. And so the next day we went, and it was unbelievable. Absolutely amazing. I won't ever do it again, but I did it.
Now, did your husband give you any pointers? Because I'm pretty sure that Army Rangers have done that upon occasion.
Yep. Yeah. He didn't really give me any pointers. To be honest, I didn't talk to him about it. It was a little bit of an internal struggle being a mom, and I was like, oh, am I making the right decision just for enjoyment? It's one thing, he's doing it for his job. So I kind of was just like, I feel like we should just not talk about this. I'm just going to go jump, and I'll call you when I land. So we left it at that, and it ended up, being fine and good and everything. So, but yeah, no, he, I think if he had advice, he would just be like, I hope your chute opens up. Tuck and roll.
Nice. Okay. Sorry for the sidetrack there, but
yeah,
I couldn't let that pass without exploring a little bit more. So,
no problem.
All right. So the optical illusion hike. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
So,
cool.
Absolutely gorgeous. Have to do it. Another one of those iconic hikes, not strenuous, not hard, definitely steep on the very last part. But again, the view, if you're there in the summertime and you can do it in the evening time when the sun is setting and just hitting the cliffside, the cliffs were lit up beautiful orange when we were there. It just, it was beautiful. Another place where I was like, just leave me here. I'm good.
All right. Nice. How about the next one? How do you pronounce that one? Take us through that.
So we're going to go with McKine's Island.
Okay.
Yep. So, all right. So this one is awesome as well. Definitely a big iconic one too that you see. This is a separate island that you have to take a ferry to. So some tips on that. If you're going to do that, there are 2 ferries, one in the morning and then one returning home. There are a couple Airbnbs that you can stay over on the island overnight. However, caveat to that, when we left there, I know that they changed the rules specifically for this island because it's a bird sanctuary for the puffins. So it's like the largest puffin colony in the world. And obviously people are, avid bird watchers, hikers, nature lovers. They're coming over there specifically to see the puffins during the summertime. And so they're having to protect their environment and all that stuff. So I do believe some rules have changed, but you can pre-book your ferry ticket. You have to do that. So we were able to do that, pre-booked our ferry ticket. The ferry left from the town that we were staying in, our Airbnb. So that was super convenient. And you don't take your vehicle over there. This one, it's a passenger ferry. We went over there. The ferry ride in itself is unbelievable because you're going in between all of these different islands to get over to, I believe it's the furthest west island. in the grouping.
Mm-hmm.
And it's enclosed, it's cold and freezing and very choppy. So if you get seasick, you might want to have a little something ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring you into this little port that used to, I believe the helicopters land there as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can move about the islands. You can go car, there's public transportation, and then the locals use helicopters that just bebop from place to place. You can, as a tourist, use those, but you pay more and you have to schedule, you have to reserve your spot. So the hike,
Is there a strong Uber presence on the Faroe Islands?
No Uber.
No, okay.
But if I were to ever be an Uber driver, that would be a fun place to be an Uber driver. So yeah, you get off the boat there, and basically the whole hike is the whole entire island. And I loved it for that in itself so much. So, and then along the way, you're going through little suspension bridges. There's puffins that are all over the place. And I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of a puffin, but they're the cutest. Besides penguins, they're the cutest little birds ever. And they're hilarious because when they're in their nesting, when they're trying to get into their nest, they literally dive bomb into the side of the mountain, into their little burrow. And so you'll just be sitting there and you're on the trails. You have to stay on a certain trail. And so you're on the trails and you'll just see these puffins just flying over you, dive bombing into the side of the mountain. My kids love that one. So at the end, so you hike the whole island, and at the end, so it's basically a loop. You can do a loop. There's a lighthouse, and we always pack food. Definitely at this place and on this island, you want to bring your food, your snacks, your water, everything that you would need. And we just put a blanket down and had a picnic right by this lighthouse. There were sheep that were walking all around us, and we're looking back at the hike that we just did, and yeah, with puffins flying all over us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, definitely one of those moments. It's, I've had a lot of pinch me moments in our travels, and that was one of those moments. And again, just crystal clear day. I mean, there's so many blogs that I read in preparation for this trip that said they, were supposed to go out to this island, but it was the ferries were canceled. So that was one thing that also I picked up on as a tip, is to do this, plan for this hike and venture early in your trip. Don't save it to the last minute, because there are a lot of times that it gets canceled due to weather. And so that way, then you're able to move it back if need be. So that was I believe on our second day, we did that. And thankfully we were able to have perfect weather. It was absolutely gorgeous, but that's definitely a tip for you if you're heading there to do that.
Yeah, the geography of the Faroe Islands is just incredible. The pictures that I've seen, these islands, jutting straight up, mm-hmm. these cliffs, often shrouded in clouds.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you had such fantastic weather, how fortunate for you.
Yeah, I do 100% agree with that. We were so fortunate, because it still would be an amazing, different experience, probably eerie at times if the clouds were in, and the wind and all that stuff that they normally have. But to be able to look out and see, 6 of the islands out in the distance, and Iceland, the tip of Iceland, and one of our hikes, it was unbelievable.
Okay. All right. How about the Fossa waterfall?
So this one was coming back from, so you take the ferry back from McKine's Island, and so the Fossa waterfall, ironically enough, it's their tallest waterfall in the Faroe Islands. It's actually pretty easy to get to.
And easiest to pronounce too.
Yeah, easiest. Yeah. I think we're confident about that one.
Yes.
But yeah, so that one was super easy. We were able to park on the side of the road. That's the thing about the Faroe Islands too. There's definitely rules and clean, amazing roads. And I don't know if we just recognize that because we live in Naples, Italy. And I don't know if you've ever been here or been told, but it's very third world esque in Naples, specifically Naples, Italy. The roads are horrible. The infrastructure is, challenging at times. So when we went,
the travel bureau is not going to send you your check this week.
I
Sorry.
know. Hey, but maybe it'll elicit change. They need that. But when we were there, I mean, we just constantly were just like, this place is amazing. These roads are amazing for being in the middle of nowhere, these just dramatic cliffs, and you have these perfect roads. So anyways, easy place to park. And you can use different apps that there were trails all over the place. I mean, we'd be driving and I'm sure there are, hundreds of trails that I hadn't even looked up or found, but you basically can pick any island and go and park and find an amazing trail just up and over the mountains all over the place. So the Fossa waterfall one, I love that. It's beautiful. And the kids enjoyed playing in the water, and so yeah, it's easy to get to.
Okay. Which brings us to the fifth one, the Calsoy Lighthouse hike.
Yep. Good job. Yep. That sounds good to me. So
okay.
Calsoy Lighthouse. Okay. So this one is on a different island.
See, I'll take the easy pronunciations.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to attempt the other ones. I'll leave those to you.
On the lake one.
Yeah. Nope. Not going to happen.
All right. So yeah, the Calsoy Lighthouse, this is on another island, the island of Calsoy. This one you can take a car ferry to, and it's nice having your car there because you do have to have a little bit of a transportation to get to the trailhead part. And you cannot pre-book this, at least when we were going. So you have to show up. Let's just say our ferry was at 9. I think I read that you needed to be there 45 minutes in advance. So we were the third car, but they fill up. So, and like I said, unfortunately you can't book it. So this was another one that we were told to do early on in the trip, just in case you didn't make that ferry, because there's one ferry there in the morning and one ferry in the afternoon. There's 2 ferries in the afternoon because some people would get stuck there. So I think they do their best to make sure everybody is going and coming, but you're also with the locals, locals are trying to go there, tourists are trying to go there. So anyways, the car ferry was efficient, great, easy, got on that, headed to Calsoy, again, another beautiful ride to get to this island. And this was another lighthouse one. This one I would say was probably the hardest and most strenuous one just because of the incline. But the views are amazing the whole entire time. That's the thing about the Faroe Islands. You don't have to hike far or high to get amazing views. You're starting just overlooking, again, 8 islands that are all in the distance. That is just geographically, mind blowing in itself. So, so this one was like you're kind of scaling the side of the mountain and working your way around it, and then climbing up to the lighthouse. And then there's a second part to it that my husband and children braved. I decided they needed a picture taken of them, so I decided to stay back. But they went out on the little part that juts out with, death drops on both sides out to a different point where you can look back at the lighthouse. And it's another, real iconic picture that you see of Faroe Islands. And again, another day that we had perfect weather, absolutely beautiful. And my kids were the only kids on these islands that we saw hiking as tourists, for sure. So they're up there, and I have a picture of my son who's crazy and doesn't stop. And he's up there just like, fingers crossed, and heels crossed, and he's just sitting there, and he's just so zen, and these mountains are in the background. And I was like, wow, he's actually sitting still. So
yeah, some kids just have pictures of their backyard birthday party, and your son's got pictures like that from the Faroe Islands. That's incredible.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate that we have lived in amazing places to be able to take them to do amazing things. And that's what we always say. We much rather one, traveling with kids is hard. Like they, if they're out in nature, life is good. They're not fighting. They're happy. My son's, picking up rocks and sticks and using his imagination to be a ninja. Like we are all about that over electronics at the house and all that stuff. So
smart.
Yeah.
All
and
right.
great learning for kids. Well, I was going to say great learning for kids too. There was one hike, particularly in Hawaii, that we were doing with my daughter. It was the Cocoa Head, and it's like 1,048 steps, old railway steps straight up a mountain, and it's intense. And we were taking her up it, and she just halfway through just flat out was like, I'm not going. I'm done. So we had a come to Jesus talk, and we were talking her through it and ended up getting her head right, and she powered through it and made it to the top. And I think that's the only time that I've ever had her quit or say that she wanted to quit on a hike. And I love that they both have the passion for getting out there in nature, and no matter the level that we're doing, they're out there doing the hikes.
Right. I mean, you have them doing that kind of thing, and it really builds their grit to stick to things and see them to their finish. So excellent.
Yep. 100%.
All right. Any last final thoughts on the Faroe Islands or other stories?
No, I mean, my biggest advice, I know that it's hard to get to. It's not, it's probably a little more expensive than what people might want to spend, but I say go. Just absolutely go. If you can do it, get out there at some point. So it's 100% worth it.
Nice. What's next for Cassie and the family? What are your next adventures?
Well, that's a good question. Not what we had originally planned. We're waiting to hear. We keep getting told that we're going to be locked down again here. So I'm going to assume that we're not. And so the kids have spring break coming up here soon. I think we're going to try to get back up to the Dolomites one more time. I'm going to stay positive and say that we're going to be able to get up there and do a little bit more. This would be probably skiing right now for them. Mm-hmm. And get up to the mountains a little bit more. If not, then if we're still locked in our region, we're going to head back to where we were last weekend, which is a beautiful area, no snow, great hiking. Just go find some more trails to get on and wear them out.
Okay. Hey, I've got a top 5 I'm going to ask you. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. So you've been to the Faroe Islands, you've been to Iceland, you've been to Scandinavia, all over Europe. From that particular region of the world, kind of Scandinavia, Northern Europe, and the Faroe Islands and Iceland, what are your top 5 sites from those areas?
Yeah, so let's see. Okay, so we went one year, we were in Kiruna, Sweden, which is very northern Sweden, and we went to the ice hotel, the largest ice hotel in the world. Stayed the night there. Must do. The Northern Lights are unbelievable.
Okay.
We were doing reindeer races and dog sleds. I'm from Houston. I've never experienced that cold in my life, but I still would go back. It's absolutely amazing. And one of those moments too, where again, it was just a surreal moment on how, especially spending the night in an ice hotel, like that was crazy. So we also been over to St. Petersburg, Russia. That really is a phenomenal city. So much history and culture, but just, a whole different world. So that was amazing.
Okay.
We've been to the Archipelago. I'm going to probably butcher that, in Sweden. It's the southern part of Sweden. It's a whole grouping of little islands. We sailed through there. That was epic. Definitely recommend that. And then Iceland, Iceland was phenomenal. I have to say, when we started out and we were in Reykjavik, didn't love it at all. And I was actually pouting and saying I wanted to go back to the Faroe Islands, but we kept driving south and getting away from the city. And some of the hikes that we went on out there, the black sand beach near Vik, unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Again, in summertime when the sun is up at 11 p.m., but setting just gorgeous. Let's see, how many was that?
That's 4.
4?
You have one more.
Okay, well, I'm going to cheat a little, and I'm going to do one that we were supposed to move to Norway. We were told that we were moving to Norway instead of Naples, Italy, and I did all the research. I knew where we were going to live, the school that my kids were going to go to, but there's a hike there. It's called the Troll's Tongue that sticks out. It's right outside of Stavanger, Norway. I got to say, I haven't been there. I've been to Norway. We've been to Oslo. Again, that was in the city, and we were supposed to make it there, and we didn't. So I'm just going to throw that one on there because I'm hoping that it'll happen before we leave here. But the point that you get to overlook the canal looks unbelievable. So I'm going to say that one because I'm going to make that one happen before we leave.
Speak it into existence. Very good.
Yes. Yep.
Good. Hey, Cassie, you know where we are?
No.
We are at that time of the episode where I ask you for your pro tip insight of the week. What do you have to share with our listeners that's going to make their next outdoor experience that much more epic?
All right. Well, I'm going to leave you with a quote that I kind of live by, which is, you always miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I think it was Wayne Gretzky that maybe said it first, but I learned it from Pele, the great soccer player. I don't know. That's just kind of my motto that I think of, my tip on life. And, go do that hike, go on that trip, go on that adventure, say yes more, figure it out later. Especially after this past year, I think we all need to live a little bit more like that.
I love that. Say yes more, figure it out later. That you are a budding thru hiker. That's a thru hiker philosophy right there. Very good.
Thanks.
All right. So there you have it. That's it. Season 2, episode 13 is in the books. I hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Cassie, and I want to thank her for joining us this week. Cassie, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram as Cassie Johannes, Cassie Johannes, and also on Facebook. I'm on there right now. That's all I'm committing to on social media. But I post all my stuff and our next adventures and every place that we've been in. You know what? I keep all of my itineraries, and I'm happy to share with anybody that asks questions because I love helping people explore the world.
You should set up a website and post all those itineraries.
I know I should. There's time.
All right. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com. Cassie, I'm also looking to you to give our listeners a recommendation for a book or a movie or a documentary, a YouTube channel that will help them keep connected to outdoor adventures. We call this our adventure media recommendation. What do you have for us?
Yeah, there's so many, but I'm going to go with right now what I'm loving are my Instagram families that I follow that are also adventurous and traveling. They have YouTube channels. I learned so much about tips with that, but the Bucket List family is one of my favorite. They speak to me because they've got kids, young kids, and they're out there making it happen and exploring this world, and I love watching them. Here We Go Again is another fabulous one. You can find them on Instagram. And then Baby Can Travel is, again, back to traveling with a newborn is always a different dynamic. So I like watching those. Our Globetrotters is another awesome one that I watch and learn a lot from. And then cleverhiker.com. I don't know. I mean, it's a big site that I read a lot of stuff on, get a lot of tips on, and equipment, and all different stuff in regards to hiking.
Excellent suggestions. Thank you so much. So that's a wrap from the John Freakin Muir studio. Any final thoughts or any shout outs you wanna give to anybody out there, Cassie?
Well, I got to give a shout out to Nikki because she's my funny story. Nikki and I have never met in person. We just, know each other over social media, and we work together. So love her. She's awesome. I love watching her pictures. So, hey, Nikki. And then to all my fellow military family out there, we always love meeting new people every place that we go. And we're so thankful for the amazing people that have come into our life that we get to adventure with.
Nice. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if there are puffins dive bombing the cliffs over your head. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.